Good evening and welcome once again to Plain Talk. In 1899, an international tribunal of arbitration, after an examination of the boundary between the then British colony, British Guyana, and Venezuela, made a decision, determination, and award. In 1941, that's about 42 years later, the Venezuelan foreign minister, stated publicly that the frontier with Guyana was well defined and was a closed issue. Now, in 2015, the controversy between the two countries appear once again not only to be surfacing, but to be boiling over. How did we get here, and how do we resolve this controversy? To help us answer these questions and more is former PPPC government minister, Dr. Henry Jeffery, who is no stranger to this program. Henry, welcome to Plain Talk.
Thank you, Chris.
You want to start by saying an answer to the question, how did we get here over this border, this controversy?
Well, that itself is a controversial question. From the day of the arbitration, there were questions about, particularly on the part of the Venezuelan councillors and representatives, I think it was Harrison and Prevost, that some kind of deal was made. They did, at that point of time, of course, claim it as a victory for the Venezuelans, because remember, the British was claiming right up to the Orinoco, and the tribunal did not give the British that kind of territory. The result is that they said it was a victory for the Venezuelans, but the Venezuelans should have been given more, and by more they meant maybe right up to the Essequibo. So from that day, from the next day, there was all kinds of feelings on the part of the Venezuelan councillors, but they are lawyers. They didn't get all they want, and you would have thought that that's what they would say. But for the most part, the issue rested there until around 1962, I believe, when it was brought up at the United Nations, and the Venezuelan made an official kind of complaint about this issue and an official kind of demand. So that's what essentially happened. Why it happened, that's the reason I said it's controversial. Why it happened is another issue altogether, because it was the era of containment, anti-communism, and if you ask people from the PPP, they would argue maybe that it was a part of an American plot to subvert the PPP regime of that period had they won the election. And that's how we got here. But as I said, it was something simmering. It is quite possible that the Americans did indeed saw the opportunity of doing something that would have upset any communist regime that should arise on the continent, and did participate in that. But that's how we got here. I suppose the Venezuelans would deny this, of course.
Well, you mentioned the issue of this lawyer. I think
Malay Prevost.
Prevost.
Yeah.
He was one of 4 lawyers who had appeared for Venezuela before the tribunal.
Yeah.
He wasn't one of the 5 arbitrators.
No, he was not.
Because I think you had 3 British and 2 Americans, and the Americans were supposed to be representing the Venezuelans.
You had 3 British? No, it was 2 British.
And they were joined by the 5th. The 5th was also British.
No. The 5th was Martin. The chairman was the 5th. It was a normal arbitration thing. When the British started, they started with
he was a Privy Councillor, the permanent member of the Council of
died.
Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
One died, and then they bring in Russell, Lord Russell. So it was a typical arbitration, like any 2 and 2, and the 2 chooses the chairman.
Yes.
And the chairman that chosen was Martins, which was a Russian. Who was a Russian.
The interesting thing about the Prevost, Malay Prevost, is that he made this statement. He wrote it down, but said it was not to be released until after his death.
If you want,
is not a little suspicious?
But obviously, everybody was dead by then that can validate this one way or another. Furthermore, he was the son of a governor of Mexico. The result is that he's a Latin for the most part, and therefore might well be inclined. He was given a Venezuela highest award
1 month before.
So all of these things, of course. I mean, I mean, it's not suspicious. And nobody's arguing this kind of issue anymore because the Guyanese are not really arguing that issue. What they're saying is, all right, you are claiming that this thing is an international arbitration by some of the best people in the world has demarcated a boundary that you have lived with for at least 60 years.
Yes.
Right?
Roughly.
And now you're saying it's no longer valid. Well, that's fine. That's fine. You have your right to say that if you feel that something. But who's to decide that? We think it's valid. You think it's not valid. Who's to decide that? You, because you have more power. It cannot be. And therefore the issue is, let's go to somebody to decide that there is an international court of justice. And let's go there. Let's ask them if this thing is valid.
But to go to the International Court of Justice, you've got to get both sides. So you've got to get Venezuela saying that we will
go. Yes, because yes and no. In my view, this is in my view, because the Geneva Agreement, my understanding, allows the United Nations Secretary General maybe to make a choice, just like how you have good officers, I suppose. You can also say that you can go, but border disputes will not end if you impose a decision on one party. Whatsoever comes out of that Court of Justice issue of the International Court of Justice, Venezuelans say, well, we didn't want to go, and the next party will come in and start a confusion all over. So in that sense, yes. If you want to close this, you need to have agreement on all sides. It might well be, though, that if the International Court of Justice said Guyana was right, that more, well, it's not even more, because I think the only person that are quarreling about whether or not that's our border, the Venezuelans. Officially it is. But it might give more moral authority to your position if they should see it that you were right, and that Venezuela still presses the case.
You mentioned the situation of the Cold War, and the whole business of about the communist state and the Americas. But by the time the controversy really heated up in the mid-60s, Jagan was already out of power.
It started in 62. Remember 62, Jagan out of power?
He went out of power in
64.
64. Yes.
And remember, that's the time it was a good time, because it it was a necessary thing, I assume, if Jagan won again. If Jagan should have won the 64 election, you had to have leverage on him. They tried everything, the British did. They rigged the election against Jagan 100 times. They did it legally by changing boundaries, so you can have 5,000 votes. 5,000 votes in Georgia and give you a seat, but you gotta get 10,000 in Barbie, a big number like that to get a seat. So they tried all sort of things to remove Jagan from office. There's no question. When they said the PNC start rigging election, it wasn't them. It wasn't to rigging because the British did it legally. They gerrymandered it. They had the authority and the legal power to do it legally, but they're the ones that started all of this against Jagan.
But the point I'm getting at, though, Dr. Jeffery, is that by the time we move to the Geneva Agreement, which I'm going to talk to you about in a moment, Jagan was already out of power. And the Americans' choice.
No. Yes, but understand
Mr.
that
Burnham was now the Prime Minister.
Yes. But remember.
So why if that theory is correct, if Jagan's theory is correct, this all had to do with getting rid of Jagan. Yeah. Why, with Burnham in power, didn't they Venezuelans say, okay, ease the
nothing happens like that. Remember, because that's why I told you from the very beginning, this was an opportunity for the Americans, not for the Venezuelans. From the very beginning, the Venezuelans started to believe that some sort of jiggery-poogery went on and they lost their land. America saw that, according to some theorists, as the opportunity to start something up against Jagan. But once they start, you don't stop it. You don't come up and say, I stop. Well, you stop. You don't stop. And in any case, Burnham was there, but nobody knows. Burnham himself was some sort of little communist, trying to do all sort of. He was with Jagan for Christ's sake. He was with Jagan, and he just differentiate himself.
Burnham was many things.
Right, exactly. So you are not certain about these chaps, and perhaps correctly, because at the end of the day, you see what happened. Burnham, first of all, start with cooperative socialism, then before 1970, start calling himself Marxist Leninist. So why would you take away your leverage like that from any of these chaps?
Well, okay, let's accept that.
Yeah.
Now, 20 days before independence, on May 5th, 1966, we had this Geneva Accord agreement. What was that agreement about?
The agreement was really about finding out whether or not the point the Venezuelans were making about this deal had any substance. It wasn't about the border as such. It was about, you're making a claim. Let's go. They looked at all the documents in the British archives and whoever archives, and they couldn't find a shred of evidence that of any deal, so to speak. So that is what it was all about. You could not for one moment think that you have, by which time Venezuela is a large country on your neighbor, that you're not going, if they are making these claims, you will say nothing about it. Or do nothing about it.
The 1966, the Geneva Accord, said in Article 1 that a mixed commission shall be established.
Yes. To determine the controversy.
For the practical settlement of the controversy.
Controversy, yeah.
It spoke of regular reports. How well did this mixed commission,
mixed commission got nowhere, as a matter of fact, because after that you had to, they got nowhere in terms of dealing with the border, because apparently what was happening on that mixed commission, if my memory serves me well, is that the Venezuelans wanted to start from the fact that the arbitration agreement was null and void. And the guy is saying that's not where we started from.
Yes.
We are starting that you have proved that more or less that it was null and void. So that nothing came of that over that period.
Why then? The other point, and it was envisaged that the mixed commission would last for about 4 years. And if within a period of 4 years from the date of the agreement, the mixed commission should not have arrived at a full agreement of a solution, it shall in its final report refer to the government of Guyana and Venezuela any outstanding questions. Now, this would have taken us to about 1970, and Mr. Burnham was very astute when it came to diplomatic matters. Why did he allow this not to proceed in the manner in which it was envisaged to proceed? In other words, that it shall without delay choose one of the means of peaceful settlement provided in Article 33 of the Chart of the United Nations. In other words, go for a peaceful settlement.
Well, first of all, they after the mixed commission failed, I think around 1970, as you said, there was a protocol of Port of Spain that put the whole thing in abeyance for 12 years, if you remember. So, border problems are like that. They are not things that just you go away. So he put it in abeyance, and then that went to around 1982 when the Venezuelans said that they are not going to renew you could have renewed the Treaty of the Protocol of Port of Spain, but I think they said they're not going to renew it, and the result is that I think we ended up for the most part in some sort of good officers thing from there henceforth.
Was that a failure of diplomacy on our part, do you think?
You're talking about borders, you know how much borders they're about. When you start this, remember, you are in an intractable position. I don't think so. You're in an intractable position. Because you can't agree on an approach to deal with this matter. Right? You can't agree. The Venezuelans would like you, maybe, perhaps, to say that arbitration was null and void and start a new arbitration. Would you be prepared to do that? No. We are not. So effectively we are saying you can't just come and tell us that. It is quite possible, perhaps you're right, but let's go to somebody else to judge that. You want to just say because I have power, I am telling you it's not a proper arbitration, and therefore because I'm big I can force you to do it. No. Let's go to a court. Let's go to somebody that can say that this arbitration, based on the grounds you are putting forward, is not good. And then we live with it. I think that's a reasonable position. What else you want us to do?
On the other hand, Maduro, the Venezuelan president, is arguing that the very fact that we were prepared to be a signatory, because Mr. Burnham was a signatory to the Geneva Accord in 1966, was an acknowledgement of a controversy or a dispute.
Of course. Nobody denies that we have a controversy, whether or not you call it dispute controversy. The controversy is whether or not the arbitration tribunal was corrupt. It's not about the border anymore. That's the controversy.
And let's clarify what you mean by corrupt in this case.
It means in this case that some corrupt deal was made with the British and the Americans and the Russians and all of them to deprive Venezuela of this great amount of land. That is the discourse. The discourse is no longer about land. If it is true that it is corrupt, well then we have to accept. But you can't just tell us it is corrupt. You have to go to some third party to do so, and we are saying that third party should be the International Court of Justice. This is not brain surgery.
As a matter of fact, is Venezuela correct in saying that there was no Venezuelan among the 5 arbitrators?
That's their choice. That was Venezuela's choice.
Who did they choose to represent?
The Americans, because they wanted to run with the Monroe Doctrine. They stood, the president at the time said, we stood on the Monroe Doctrine. The people they are choosing was American Chief Justice and all these sort of things that they have great faith in. When they are confronted with that now, they tend to argue that what the Americans, the reason they did that was that the British say that they wouldn't sit with any colonials on the tribunal, the British judges or the British government or whosoever. But that was rubbish. The two British, well, we call them British arbitrators, Russell, these chaps were Irish at a time when the Irish was fighting for independence. So, I mean, this
so you don't buy that at all?
Oh, no, well, it's nonsense. The truth is, there is only one truth. You say that this arbitration is not, there was some corruption there that Martin sold out or whatsoever. Well, please, let's go to somebody else to determine, bring your evidence, and we see that is true.
Now, Burnham died in 1985.
Okay.
As you said, that accord ended in 82, the 12 years kind of truce.
Yeah.
The PPP came to power in 1992.
Yeah.
They themselves had 23 years to promote and resolve the controversy. As you know, they built a fairly strong relationship with President Hugo Chavez. Do you think they tried to resolve this controversy?
Well, there are different approaches to things like that. There are some people who believe that these things are insoluble, for instance, that really and truly we got to work with each other and try to develop good relations and go forward in this kind of a manner. You can listen to the PPP even now saying, look, you're upsetting a big neighbor, and people says, oh, how can a small country upset a big neighbor and all that sort of thing. But I remember Finland station in Russia. Finland stayed next to Russia for a long, long time. Soviet Russia, they did them nothing because Finland understood quite clearly it was a small neighbor and how to behave in that context. So I'm not knocking necessarily, but what I'm saying to you, you can have a good relationship with your neighbor and you understand each other and you press on and so on. But you cannot deny the fact that over time, for a very long time, almost indeed, Venezuela invaded Guyana since about 1884, when they start saying this land is there. Even before the tribunal made its decision.
Which is what part.
And they trying to force the Cleveland, the hands of the American president, which they did force, and he started a commission. The American Boundary Commission to determine that's a hell of a thing, because here the argument now, and Malik Prevost, his argument is that he didn't do it according to right and law, but he was the secretary of the American Boundary Tribunal, and Cleveland said in that tribunal, he says that this demarcation should not worry about right but convenience. It should work with convenience, and you can see sense, because boundaries can't be based strictly upon right. If, for instance, if I have a right to the Orinoco, but Venezuela would lose shipping, and you still have the Essequibo. Therefore, you have to be more flexible in how you are dealing. This thing can't be based strictly upon life.
In any case, how do you establish a historical right that goes back?
Well, they claim that the Pope made Alexander whatsoever divide the world between the Portuguese and the Spanish. They went till there, but they're claiming occupancy, as a matter of fact. They say they occupy. The Dutch never owned anything. They owned all the Pomeroon. And the Essequibo. Now, but these are irrelevant issues at this point of time. We cannot be sitting here trying to deal with that.
No, but we were talking. Remember the point I asked you what you thought about the PPP's position on the controversy.
Yeah. Well, as I said,
and can you recall the extent to which it came up whilst you were a member of cabinet? Very influential member at that.
Well, yes, but it came up. I mean, we discussed it, and in any discussion about Venezuela, it must be that Venezuela is a bigger neighbor than you, right? And it was more or less a continuation of the Burnham process out of the Burnham regime. That, listen, we have to have good neighborliness, we have to work with the Venezuelans. It's our land, not a blade of grass and all of that. But in that context, we are going to work with them. Our choice was since Burnham time, we want a judicial, that was their choice, a resolution, but the Venezuelans don't want it, so effectively we will have to work with them towards good neighborliness and development, and maybe over time something can happen, and this matter become less important. That is what I thought that the PP was doing. I didn't see anything particularly wrong with that.
But is it your view that this stoking of the fire arose after the announcement of the discovery of petroleum potential?
Not really. Yeah, not really. I mean, yeah, you can say that if you like, because everybody like to think of self-interest. Venezuela got a lot of Venezuela.
But that is when their decree came out, isn't it?
No, but then there are many issues in Venezuela that might have led to that decree without just saying that it's oil. It might well have been. I don't have any evidence. You don't have any evidence. We're speculating at this stage. But Venezuela have a lot of resources. I don't think people make too much of this kind of thing. I think Chavez has his own problems in Venezuela. He was here. Remember, sometime in 2013, he was here. The minute he leave, people coming across the border, almost embarrassing him. Remember, he was here. I think it's 2013, and the minute he left, you had soldiers and coming and laying claim to Guyana territory. So I'm not even sure who moved the Technic Pordana. You remember the ship that?
Yes.
So he has his own problems, and one of the things you must be aware when you are dealing with these issues is the man's internal problems too, and how you will relate to that. You just can't think, any particular action is not necessarily a result of what the intent towards you. It's only one thing Venezuelans agree about politically, and that the land is there. So maybe he's trying to leverage that into some kind of
It is
support.
often sorry, go on.
Go on.
It is often said that Venezuelans, and perhaps you said it as well, it's part of their psyche. They see the map and they hear all these chants about Zona de...
Almost. It's in the school books. It's all over the place. I mean, we do that. You don't fool yourself. We fall into some of the Guyanese run around and say, oh, we have the best education system in the Caribbean. Rubbish. But that thing... I mean, it was sold to us. It's nonsense. And it's even our national development plan. If you do the research, you'll see it was foolishness. But it's there. And many of us believe it. We can't talk
No,
without
but this
saying
land, this particular land, is at this stage, Guyana's.
Yeah.
Venezuela is claiming it, they're putting it on their map. That's clear. It's not
From your standpoint,
merely propaganda. Is that a breach of international law?
I don't particularly think so. From your standpoint, it is yours. From their standpoint, it is theirs. They should not have lost it. Of course, it has always amused me that anytime, and they won't want even to do that, anytime they say they want to go back to arbitration, they might have to go back to arbitration for all the lands right to the Orinoco. They can't just go back for the Essequibo. I don't think that is even what they want. All they want, because anytime that thing is open, you have to put everything back. And they'll have to go to the Orinoco. Indeed, it was said by the British ambassador there at the time, in maybe about 1899, when the arbitration with the tribunal make a decision, that the more influential Venezuelans were upset that the British didn't get that Orinoco because they thought it would be developed and got developed because of British wealth and all that. So it's a confused issue, but I am not going back there.
You think we've done enough to educate Guyanese about this particular matter, given that our country, part of it, and Cocoa, is still occupied?
No. I think that the PPP didn't do a good job there. The PPP thought, you know, right up at the top, even when Jerry Jagan was in power the first time, I think it was Betancourt. I can't remember the government. But when people told him that if Venezuela is going to go at the UN and all that and start all this kind of confusion, he said, no, they are our friends. They are friends. When he did it, he says the American
Marxist
force.
brothers.
Yeah, we are friends. When he did it, he says it's the American force. But you should have known that the Americans got a kind of leverage. So, yes, I would say that no, we have taken, because we start believing again that we are dealing with friendship. There's no friendship in international relations. There's no friendship, you know. Countries don't have friends. They have enduring interests. You know, nobody's your friend internationally.
Yeah, what is it? There's no permanent friend, permanent interest.
Right. So, you know, so, yes, we should have done more. Certainly, I think the PP even might admit that it should have done more to keep this on the border all the time. Every moment that they put it in your history books, do that kind of a thing, and keep it not only to school children, just as the Venezuelans were doing, but more or less to everybody, and keeping them aware. No, we did not. I don't think we did sufficiently.
There are possibly three solutions, and there's always a combination. You can have a military, you can have a diplomatic, or you can have a juridical. Which one do you favor?
In the modern world, it's almost impossible for them to do a military. People don't, it's too costly. Venezuela want to invade Guyana. That one is really out. The diplomatic indeed collapses into the juridical, because you have to have the diplomatic to get the juridical, and therefore it collapses. It's only two you really have. You have an agreement between them for a certain process, which can be juridical, which can be arbitration, which can be all sort of things.
Yeah.
You have the United Nations and the Secretary General, which is stated in Geneva Agreement. But effectively, I think it's only two. And it was, people tell me that Venezuela is going to invade Ghana. I said, you're out of your mind.
No, Venezuela did, according to the reports in Ghana, Venezuela forces, yes.
And they're still on cocoa and all that sort of a thing. And it's something to make for us to quarrel about. I'm not in the least trying to belittle that, but I don't think that it would be too costly.
What do you think about our military marching and showing force and said we're ready for war?
Well, I don't know, they said we were ready.
Yeah, it was quoted in the newspaper when Mr. Phillips asked them, what are you doing? What do you want? And they said,
yeah. But they are said.
Could they have been serious?
No. But they got to be serious. If the Venezuela crossed the border, they got to be there ready to get killed if possible. It's no question about it. But that don't mean they want to, or to say we are ready to die is not to say want to die. Mm-hmm. There's two different stories altogether. And then we think they are soldiers. That's why you're in the army.
To defend the
nation. So you got to be ready to do it. I saw nothing wrong with that kind of a thing.
The diplomatic.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look who will support your initiatives,
okay.
And we can start with CARICOM. CARICOM has been pretty lukewarm on this matter, haven't they? In fact, whilst this is going on, Venezuela and Jamaica are extending their economic cooperation.
Yeah, well, that's fine. We perhaps should do the same thing, extend economic cooperation with Venezuela at the same time that we are cussing them out about trying to take the borders. We are not, one mustn't exclude the other.
No, but we talk about CARICOM. Would you count, have you seen any definitive, emphatic statement by CARICOM in support of Guyana?
Let me put it this way. The little I've seen about CARICOM is that they have, for the most part, one time I think under Siago they tried to make a dash, but for the most part, CARICOM has always supported Guyana on this issue. But there is no question in my mind that if push comes to shove, they will support you on this issue. But at the same time, as I was telling you just now, Guyana should not make this issue an issue that makes it impossible for you to have economic relationship with Venezuela. And if I'm saying for Guyana, I'm certainly saying it for the other countries of the Caribbean. This must not mean, of course, that if Venezuela tried to do anything physical or economical towards Guyana, that CARICOM shouldn't come out and support you. And I think they would. But they would.
Well, you think they should have done it even more before? Rather than wait for it to escalate?
What would you have wanted them to do? Because this always boils down to that. What would you have wanted them to do? Chavez, Maduro is in a sticky position. He wants to bring some kind of support base back. This is one of the issues, perhaps border issues that Venezuela has grown up with and so on. No, what you wanted CARICOM to actually do, I understand it could be a little more forceful in language and all sort of thing, but I doubt and I'm certain the Venezuelan government understands quite well that they can't cross that border and have CARICOM support. They will not have it, and they can't keep harassing economically, and CARICOM would not think. We can't stop them from doing it. And that's why in today's article I said, we perhaps should think of joining this organization, the real part.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
They also, people, international relations, people don't easily forget.
They are not people; they're states. States don't forget.
Yes. When a couple, I think it was about a year or two ago, the Falkland Islands, the Malvinas, whatever depending on which side you're on, it appears that Guyana took the side of Argentina. Was this your impression as well?
It was a twofold thing. This was one of the Burnham's little.
No, but I'm talking very recently.
Yes. No, in Burnham time, he didn't take it quite clear. He didn't make it quite clear.
Yeah.
Either, he was talking at one level that yes, maybe they have a point, but they ain't got no right to be invading people's country, right? And therefore here, because remember Guyana position, even on the border was their position. At least that's what I understood him to be said. I stood him to be saying is that you might well have a point about this thing, but you can't just go invading people. And therefore that was wrong, and therefore there must be methods of peaceful way of going about this, and even Mercosur now, and all these organizations say you got to deal with this peacefully. Taking borders by force is out. Venezuelan, Brazilian made it quite clear the other day. These are 19th century confusions.
When Brazil made that statement, they didn't specifically refer to the controversy. Was it your impression, your inference,
it's not,
that it was directly to do with this controversy?
With all the controversy, Venezuela got confusion too with Colombia and all of that. So they are making a statement, don't upset the boundaries on Latin America. That's always been their position from my understanding. Why are you upsetting the boundaries? Want to upset the boundaries of what exists in Latin America? I don't think it was a change in their position particularly.
Of course, not too long ago, they themselves got a slice of Guyana, didn't they?
No slice. That was a long time ago too, but there's arbitration. It was done in a given way,
We left it, and I think Mr. Granger has said he would like the juridical route.
That's been there for us since the problem has been there for the most part.
Well, if we're saying that essentially it's somewhere between diplomatic and court, the international court, should Guyana have lodged a formal complaint to the UN Security Council?
Didn't they?
No, they didn't.
Okay. Well, I would have thought that, well, it's in the hands of the Secretary General, and he must advise.
But
the
you have
way
to
forward.
you have to have a formal complaint.
Yes, but he must advise the way forward. Yeah, if they have not done so, you bet that there was some sort of technicality there. If you have a matter with the Secretary General integral part of the Security Council, he can advise and so on. And because Security Council, no, I mean, I read Mr. Pollard's, Justice Pollard's piece that they should do this and do that. And I would have, if they have not done so, I would have thought that they have good reasons, because they must know it's on the table. And the Security Council, of course, deals with matters, I think, when they really come to a head, and maybe you still have maneuverability before you need to do that. I don't know if they have not done.
Part of the issue we face and could work for or against us is that lots of the arms and military hardware that Venezuela has come out of China and Russia. Do you see the Russians and the Chinese saying to Venezuela, look, you're not going to use arms we supply to you against a country with which we have got excellent relations?
The Russian and Chinese can say what they like. Venezuela will find arms if they want arms. And the Russian and Chinese know that. So they're not going to upset Venezuela by saying it, because that would be almost like saying nothing. And they might destroy a relationship. They might well say to the Venezuelans quietly, man, don't upset relationship and things. But that's for your diplomatic work. You got to work on them. We are perhaps one of the major country that brought China out of the cold in terms of the United Nations and all of that. The Chinese always tend to remember that, as a matter of fact. But the point is that yes, that's your diplomatic work. You got to work with them to work on these other people. As Mr. Granger said, he was working on the Cubans. They are there. They're being friends to both of us. And the result is that you got to work on your people. That's your diplomatic work.
Of course, Cuba is also extremely friendly with Venezuela.
There is that, yes.
What is your assessment of this government's handling of the matter?
Well, the government, this government, unlike the previous government, who think they have to live with this issue more or less, and live with Venezuelans' notion that every so often they're going to cause trouble and disrupt and write letters to people, don't invest, and so on. So the previous government took the notion that this is almost a situation you're going to have to live with, you don't have the power. This government says we want it solved. And the only way to solve this peacefully is to go to arbitration. That's where we are with that situation. Logically,
but you can't unilaterally go to arbitration.
No,
arbitration means both sides.
Well, to the International Court of Justice, and the Secretary General can determine. But if he determines and the Venezuelans don't like it, whatsoever happened there, if they they might never even go.
No,
so the result is that it's always got to be some kind of agreement, and they're not going to go because more likely a court ain't going to overthrow more or less the agreement of what was another legal kind of agreement. So they're not going to go. So the PPP government decided it's a situation we have to live with, and this government decided they want to solve it now. I don't know. I mean, whether or not it's soluble or solved, you still got to live with it till it's done. So I can see a dialectic between the kind of two arrangements. So there we go.
You're one of Guyana's foremost political commentators.
If you say so.
I mean, would you say that this is perhaps the biggest challenge face, that the Granger administration has had to face since it came to power?
Of course, and maybe that you will have to face down the road. I mean, I don't think it will face another challenge like this. Is a state trying to take over another state, and I hope that they learn the lesson and from this, and that will go forward in its strength, because I don't think they'll face another problem like this one again.
This, and again, this has some connection with what you did within international trade. What this claim, spurious or otherwise that it is, means is that the political risk of ExxonMobil coming to Guyana and operating in Guyana.
Well, I don't know.
Has gone up, has it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, ExxonMobil is not a baby
No, but do you see an insurance company underwriting a project in an area that has a live controversy?
Well, if the insurance company thought that ExxonMobil was underwritten by the United States government, they might well do. I mean, these are international things. People talk to people. People just don't do it.
Yes,
these are not normal commercial.
No, they might not be. They might not be, Dr. Jeffery. But ExxonMobil has shareholders. It's got to satisfy its shareholders that look, we are not walking into a minefield. No pun intended.
Yeah, but if you know that and they walked into minefield, they must have some other leverage, wouldn't they?
Well, we're not sure what they're doing.
Exactly.
They're no longer there
Exactly.
now. But
exactly.
Do you see this affecting investments in?
But it has been affecting investments. I mean, where are the people from the Technic Port down that the Venezuelan come and carry off to Margarita? I mean, it will affect, and that's their intent. Even that is something I want to say, but that's the result of what they do. It affects the development of Essequibo, and that is maybe one of the major problems this government wants to see it solved. Major reasons, because you can't have every so often when anything happens in Venezuela or any Venezuelan leader get up in the morning and he don't feel good and he start talking about Venezuela.
No point saying you're a country rich in minerals if it's located in an area that is
exactly.
disputed.
Well, obviously.
Do you, and you tend to be a little bit cynical about international relations, do you see this being resolved within the next 5 years?
No, I don't think so. I think you're going to have to sit down and live with Venezuela in any ways, because they're not going to any arbitration, any international court or whatsoever. I don't think they'll go. If they go, well, then yes, it will be resolved. But one way or another. But they're not going to go to any international court. So, no, you will have to, after all of this and inquired about rice, inquired about this and so on, you will still have to sit down and live with Venezuela. And I assume the people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and all of that, they know that, and they're making plans to do just that. Although, when a man starts sending missiles by your border, you gotta get serious here. So,
because they are serious.
Yeah, well, whether or not they're serious, and you don't know that.
Nobody sends missiles.
Right. So you must send it. So you gotta be serious here. And the result is that, but you know that you'll have to live with this. I don't think this will solve in 5 years. If it does, I would be perhaps one of the most happy person. But I don't think so, knowing the little I know.
One of the options that I think had been floated, I'm not sure how settled it was on the table, about joint development of the disputed area.
Yeah, but it's always... I was there, as a matter of that
You
night
were, okay.
when that thing was put to board. And to be truthful, I sat there and I thought, yeah, that's a good idea.
You still think it's a good idea?
No, boredom knocked it out of me. I was there. Boredom said, joint development? Joint? You got money to develop? No, you don't have. They are the ones that are going to do the development, and as they do the development, what are you going to be left with?
Because you didn't have the
You
population.
don't have the
You don't have the population, you don't have the money.
you don't have anything. And to be truthful, I sat there for a few moments because it wasn't long before I want to make this statement quite clear that that's nonsense. There's not running. And so, so joint development.
That's off the table.
No. And the joint development is kind of also accepting, even if not accepting that Venezuela has any right to the land, but giving them some sort of footing. In the minute you say I'm going to have joint development with you, you are saying, yeah, there's a level of legitimacy in anything you are saying. And I don't think we even got to that discussion at that time. It was only a question of whether or not you got any resources to develop things. They have resources, and even if they'll pile it on there, and then you have nothing at the end.
There's a report came out today that President Granger will have a press conference tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do you expect this to be the sole focus?
No, it can't be the sole. I mean, he went there, yes, he made it the sole focus of his speech. But that would not, I don't think you want to make that this.
Well,
this might be his first press conference.
It is his first press conference.
6 months of things people want to ask him about. And therefore, this is
his press conference. He could decide what questions. He could set the agenda.
Well, if he sets it, yes, in a sense, but you're going to always have people down there going to want to know about other things. And it would be a funny thing for him to go there and just want to talk about one thing. When you have 6 months of thinking, all right, this is a big issue. But there are people there waiting for 3-5 months or whatsoever, waiting to hear other things. You are not going to the press. You are a media person.
What do you think will be the burning issues facing the media tomorrow as they assemble for President Granger's first press conference?
What do you mean the burning issue?
What do you think the key issues they would want to focus on?
Well, the media would want to sort of reflect on a lot of the issues the PPP has been talking about, discrimination, because they are not there to make up their own issues. The PPP has been saying that there has been discrimination in employment, that there not be enough information. Yes, even the Static News, make some sort of statement about that. Of course, there's a border. What about the national unity? What all that means? They have a range of things that they can ask about.
Many press conferences will have to.
We can't do it. Yeah. So,
do you subscribe to this idea of discrimination taking place? On some people even go so far as to say witch hunting.
Well, because I don't think it's discrimination in the sense that like you have the government running out there and trying to discriminate, because what you mean, there's always discrimination. Who are we discriminating against?
Yes.
Are we discriminating against Indian people? I don't think the government is running around trying to do that. Are we trying to discriminate against those who run and support the PPP all the time? Definitely. And I think that's where, of course, they're picketing, you put your name on PPP list, and then you call it discrimination. You are not your public servant. You're not supposed to do it. The great problem with the government is that it's not consistent. It is dealing with some people like that, and it's not dealing with others like that.
Are you speaking of Mr. Sharma, for example, Dr. Sharma, Mahendra Sharma?
Well, yes.
He was on a list,
yeah.
And he's been kept.
Well,
how do you explain that?
Well, how can I explain?
I'm asking you.
That is what Mr. Granger.
Foremost.
That is what Mr. Granger would have to explain. And now for me, I see the contradictions too. I mean, you can't. if you're going to say if you were on the list and do certain, I mean, there might be lots of other reasons that these people were on the list, but on the table they were always being part of this regime and all this sort of thing. But that can't be explained.
That can't be. You can't. No,
it can't.
National leader can say that.
No, well, exactly. So effectively, you had to maybe cut them loose and then integrate them later. But you can't.
This is not happening.
Well, the press has all that to ask. And that's what I'm telling you, there's loads of things. So this thing about Venezuela can never be the only issue on the table.
Dr. Henry Jeffery, I'm sorry time has run out on us.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting talk. I know you were worried about this 1 hour. But you're capable.
Well, I tried.
And you've shown it. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Operators and viewers, thank you and good night. Next week, I hope to address the question of climate change. As you know, there'll be a major international conference to set levels and targets on greenhouse gases, with implications for the existence of the world within the next 100 years. Until then, thank you again and good night.